the legendary Delmonico's has a history like none other. It's not only America's first fine dining restaurant, they've invented and pioneered numerous dishes from their signature Delmonico Steak to the Eggs Benedict. Not to mention, they're considered to be one of the best steakhouses in New York City, and I just had to check it out.
Today I'm here in Lower Manhattan, right along the East River. The Brooklyn Bridge is right behind me, and I'm very excited because this evening I'm going to not only one of the most iconic restaurants in New York City, I'm talking about one of the most iconic and important restaurants in the entire country. I'm going to the legendary Delmonico's. Delmonico's was not only the first fine dining restaurant in America, it's also the first place to actually use the term restaurant in this country. It's primarily a steakhouse, and they even pioneered their own cut of steak, the Delmonico cut, but calling it just a steakhouse is kind of selling the restaurant short. It's so much more than that. They've invented, or at least popularized, numerous dishes like the Baked Alaska, Eggs Benedict, the Wedge Salad, the list goes on and on. Their history is so rich. They've been around since 1837. Now, with such a long history, they've had their ups and downs, and most recently it's been kind of a dark period for the restaurant. They've been closed for almost 3 years. Like a lot of restaurants, they closed their doors at the onset of the pandemic, but even as things got better, they just never reopened. The thing was that there were numerous legal disputes between ownership of the restaurant and ownership of the name. There was even an issue with the restaurant's landlord. But thankfully, the restaurant is back again. It just reopened last week, August 21st, 2023, and I am so excited to dine there. This is the restaurant that Mark Twain celebrated his 70th birthday at. Tesla was a regular. This is one of the greatest steakhouses in the entire country, and ever since I moved to NYC, I've been wanting to eat there. So without any further delay, let's head to Delmonico's and make one of my food dreams come true.
Over the course of its long history, there are actually multiple locations of Delmonico's throughout New York City. Today, there's only one, and it's located in the financial district at 56 Beaver Street.
I made it here to Delmonico's, and can we just take a second to admire the sheer beauty and photogenicness of this wonderful restaurant. Honestly, it's got one of the most recognizable and iconic exteriors out of any restaurant in New York City. It is absolutely stunning. However, I think I would like to see one of their steaks a bit more than the outside. Let's head to dinner.
Started by the Delmonico brothers in 1837, the institution was at first a small shop that sold pastries and coffee, but then expanded to become what was truly the first fine dining restaurant in the country. Between its closure during the pandemic and its reopening, the restaurant has undergone a renovation. Since it was my first time at Delmonico's, I can't speak to the changes that were made, but I did really enjoy the look of the dining room. Not to mention, I felt like I had one of the best seats in the house. I sat in a wonderfully cushioned booth that gave me a great view of the dining room in action. To save money, which is very difficult at Delmonico's, I skipped the wine list and went straight to the food. Their menu is made up of the numerous staples that have made the restaurant an iconic institution, but there's also a number of new and updated dishes from executive chef Eddie Hong. Hong has had over 15 years of culinary experience, which even included positions at Michelin-starred establishments. Speaking in regards to his new position at the restaurant, Hong said, quote, "I'm excited to enrich Delmonico's dining experience by introducing the option of new global flavors and techniques while also celebrating its classic dishes. After placing my order, the bread and butter arrived. There were 2 different kinds of bread, and I found them both to be very fresh and full of flavor." The butter was excellent. It was so smooth and light, it was like a tasty cloud. While I certainly enjoyed the bread, I had to exercise some self-control since I knew I had some heavy food ahead of me, but for my appetizer, I still kept things light. I got the Caesar salad, which contained little gem lettuce, aged Parmesan, chives, anchovies, and it was topped with a mung ran dressing. I got this dish in part because it is a steakhouse classic, and it's a dish that has been reinterpreted by Chef Eddie Hong. In addition, I also chose the salad because it is one of the more affordable appetizers, and let me reiterate, Delmonico's is expensive. Anyways, even just looking at the course, it's clear that it's not your typical Caesar salad. It's far more elegant and refined, and I loved it. Now, I'm a carnivore and I don't get too excited about a salad, but that was a top-notch dish. The little gem leaves acted like little bowls that were perfectly able to capture all the flavors and textures of the salad in one bite. As far as the dressing, it wasn't too strong, but it acted in perfect harmony with the rest of the flavors of the dish. While I do love a good old-fashioned Caesar salad with massive croutons and heavy shavings of cheese, I would take Delmonico's offering over that any day of the week. It was absolutely delicious and the perfect start to my dinner. But finally, it was time for the main event. Since it was my first visit at the restaurant, I had to get their signature Delmonico Steak. It's an 18-ounce boneless ribeye from Brandt Family Farms in California. Back in the restaurant's early days, the Delmonico brothers would butcher meat out in the street and utilize whatever the best cuts were available for their establishment. Today, the ribeye is used for the Delmonico cut because of its juiciness and rich marbling. It's truly a beautiful plate in its simplicity, and I couldn't wait to take my first bite. But before I could even do that, my waitress asked if it was cooked to my liking.
Absolutely perfect.
Temperature of the meat came out well like that?
Oh yeah, absolutely
Thank
perfect.
you.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thankfully, it was done to an absolutely perfect medium rare. And finally, I was able to take my first bite. It was so juicy and tasty, it basically had everything you could want with a steak. The sensation I experienced reminded me of why we pay so much money for meat like that in the first place. It was truly wonderful. The texture was solid and proved incredibly tender and easy to chew. I don't think I've ever had a steak that went down that easily. It was clear that I was consuming a very high quality piece of meat, which it should have been because it had a price tag of $79. Like I keep saying, Delmonico's is expensive. In fact, the restaurant has always seemed to have been pretty costly. In an 1876 article in the Colorado Daily Chieftain newspaper, complaints were made in regards to the high prices of several New York City establishments, including Delmonico's, which charged 40 cents for a cup of coffee at the time. Clearly, there's been some inflation since then. On top of the steak were crispy shallots, which were quite nice. However, with the reopening and a new chef, even menu standards like the signature Delmonico Steak appear to have been altered. In previous renditions of the dish, it seems to have been topped with fried onion strings. While I certainly enjoyed the shallots, I do feel like the look of the fried onion strings are a bit more impressive. I've also heard that the previous Delmonico Steak was topped with Maldon sea salt. I don't believe there was any on mine, and if I did have to levy a complaint against my steak, it's that it needed just a bit more salt. But like I said, even just as it was still a phenomenal steak. Alongside my steak, I was given a cup of the Delmonico sauce. Normally, I really don't like adding any steak sauce to my steak as I don't want anything to obscure the flavor of the meat, but I was at least curious to try the restaurant's offering. It was a really bold sauce that was packed with flavor. It was tangy and even had a bit of spice. Paired with my steak, it was good, but I think it was just a bit too overpowering for my liking. I feel like the sauce would go really well with some other foods, but for me, it overwhelmed the flavor of the beef. However, there were some intriguing butter and sauce additions for the steak on the menu, such as a spicy kosho butter and a creamy blue cheese sauce. I would definitely be interested to try one of those during my next visit. For a side, I chose the hash browns, which was topped with a Espelette creme fraiche, a shallot marmalade, trout roe, and chives. I've had a lot of hash browns before, but none quite like this. It's got a unique and nice look to it. The hash browns were more like a dense potato cake. It was good, but I thought it needed just a bit of salt. Thankfully, when paired with the other components of the dish, it was pretty tasty. It was creamy, savory, and sweet, while the trout roe gave a subtle pop of flavor. However, the difficult thing was to get all those elements together for a bite. Because of that, it wasn't the easiest thing to eat. If one is feeling truly decadent, the hash browns could also be topped with caviar, which is offered at a market price. But I didn't even have to ask to know that addition was out of my price range. Although I would imagine that caviar would be a great component to the course since it would provide a needed saltiness along with a brininess. While the hash browns weren't perfect, I still enjoyed them. I also have to mention the exceptional service I had that evening. My waitress, who I believe was named Grace, was spectacular. She was so nice, helpful, and it felt like she would go to any lengths to ensure that I had a great experience. For instance, when I was consuming my hash browns, at one point there wasn't a lot of creme fraiche left in comparison to the other components on the plate. Grace noticed and offered to get me more creme fraiche. She was truly incredible and the type of person that inspires the confidence that she could make anything happen. I felt like I could even ask her to get me a date with Olivia Wilde and she could make it into a reality. The bussers at Delmonico's were fantastic as well. They seemed to have a sixth sense which alerts them instantly to the moment I finished my food so my plates could be cleared. For being open again after only a week, I was so impressed with just how efficient and professional the service was. It was truly first rate. Unfortunately, I eventually finished my food, but at least I had dessert to look forward to. Their dessert menu has some good looking options, including the restaurant's signature baked Alaska, but I decided to go with their cheesecake. What was presented to me was literally the most beautiful cheesecake that I've ever seen. It was a true treat for the eyes as the plate was filled with colors and a stunning level of culinary artistry. There were a number of elements to the dish, but the most prominent were the passion fruit sorbet and the balsamic cream. While the dessert looked spectacular, it tasted even better. Now, I've consumed a lot of cheesecakes before, and it is one of my favorite desserts, but Delmonico's offering proved to be the best cheesecake that I've ever had. The flavor and texture were perfection. It was so rich but had a lively acidity from the berries and sorbet. Texturally, the cake also earned top marks as it was so smooth but also had the variation from its crumble and base. Honestly, I can't think of a single flaw with the dish. I absolutely loved it. But unfortunately, after finishing, it was time to face reality as I was presented with the bill. My total came to $155.13. The restaurant does, however, offer a slight discount for paying in cash, but I just utilized my credit card. With my tip, I spent about $185, which was very expensive for me. But thankfully, it paid for a phenomenal experience at a restaurant that I've always dreamed of dining at.
See this smile? I am so happy. That dinner was absolutely exceptional. I just loved every single aspect of that experience, from the food to the exceptional service to being in a restaurant with so much history. Well, I didn't like the bill. That part sucked. Delmonico's is definitely a special occasion type of restaurant that was expensive. But at the same time, it's just one of those essential type of restaurants. Everyone's got to go there at least once, although I definitely want to go a lot more than once. I just need to make more money to make that happen. Anyways, my steak was really good. If it just had a touch more salt, it would have been perfection. There's no doubt about it, Delmonico's is one of those top steakhouses in NYC. It's right up there with Peter Luger, Keen's, and all those legends. But it truly is a lot more than just a steakhouse. It really is a fine dining restaurant, and it is a fine example of that. I mean, I really loved my salad, and that cheesecake was hands down the best that I've ever had by far. So that will do it for me today. That truly was a phenomenal dinner. Delmonico's is an exceptional restaurant, so now I'm gonna head home and fantasize about the next time that I can go back to Delmonico's.